Hi, this is Steve Thomas. Welcome to Backlash, where I tell you tales and stories from behind the images. This is a series of images I posted about a week, 10 days ago, and one from a little bit further back to give some context to the last image. They're all bike races, all shot in the rain, road races. This particular shot is a tour camper in the Philippines. Everything, whenever you shoot a bike race in the Philippines, you can be sure it's going to be eventful, and you've got to expect the unexpected. We had an awful lot of rain in this stage, and most of the other stages, to be truthful. All sorts went on in this race. This after this particular stage, we all ended up in a hotel. When I say hotel, it was more of a hostel. The entire race, but there were only a certain number of rooms, so there were about 8 or 9 to a room. 2 bedroom, sleeping on floors, sleeping on chairs, anywhere. There was no electric, no water by the time we got there because of the storms, and the water being off meant that everybody had to shower outside in the rain. So it was crazy. The riders covered in soap, and yeah, it was a pretty crazy time. The following day after this, I remember we were behind the race. I was on the back of a motorbike, and the roads are really sketchy. It was a coastal road, and the motor pilot, I was hanging on. I literally closed my eyes. It was that scary. We were weaving through the cars to get back to the race, and it was. People don't realise just how dangerous it can be on a motorbike. They're more concerned about the riders, obviously so. But when you're hanging off the back of a motorbike with not a lot of protection, it's pretty scary. It kept getting flagged down, and there was something going on, and we stopped. And it turned out that the local governor, he had a helicopter, and they wanted me to get some helicopter shots. And we were in the middle of nowhere, so I was just like left at this beach, little fishing village with about 4 or 5 houses, and this little helicopter. It was like something out of a James Bond film. Came down, kick-copter homemade. There was hardly any room in it. The doors were shaking, and so they wanted me to shoot the race from that. The motorbike had gone, the race had gone, and off we went in this little copter, and we had to go out to sea because the storm had come in really badly, and then it couldn't land, and it was so small. It was so small that the doors were shaking, and literally we were all holding on, and it couldn't take much fuel, and it was running out of fuel, and so we couldn't go into shore, and it was carrying too much weight. There was me, the pilot, and I don't know, there was another guy, and so because of that we couldn't go back in, and we couldn't get to the race, so they had to drop me off, and they literally dropped me off in the middle of a paddy field, and I hitchhiked back to the finish. It was luckily there was a car way behind the race that had something to do with the race, and I managed to jump out and stop them. So there weren't a lot of pictures that day. But yeah, in the Philippines, it's always interesting, particularly shooting in the rain. This picture is the Jelajah Malaysia from about 2010, 2011. This was about stage 3. This is the Iranian TPT team on the front who won the race. The rain came down pretty quickly. There wasn't a lot of notice, as it tends to in this part of the world, and when it does come, you really know about it. We managed to run for cover, and was in a little road shack, a little wooden shack now, and got this shot. Got back on the motorbike because I have to get back to the race. You can't hang around. Got to get the images. It was still coming down. Cameras were stuck up inside of my coat. Managed to pass them into a team car, and pick the one camera up again at the finish, and kept one with me. By the time we got to the finish and I got the camera back, turned out that the camera had shorted in the rain, which is a hazard in these conditions because it comes down so fast. It's not like European rain, which is pretty steady, pretty gentle, and you can forecast it. When it comes, and if you're not covered, even if you cover up your camera, there's a good chance of losing it. So that was a Canon 5D. That was actually my spare camera, and the reason I was using that was about 4 or 5 days before I'd flown down to a race in Singapore, which immediately preceded this race. I was stopped off in Langkawi on the way to shoot some kayaking. I was in a mangrove swamp in a kayak. Brand new 5D Canon 5D Mark II, brand new 7200 lens, 70D, all sorts of new gear, around about £10,000 worth of equipment. Bag open, and I made the mistake of slightly leaning sideways because I'm a fairly adept kayaker, and the kayak flipped. So everything, entire empty camera bag, went into the mangrove swamp, which was salt water. I dived down. You can see nothing, and obviously there's a lot of monitor lizards and all sorts of other rubbish down there. Managed to get most of the stuff back, but by then it was all dead. It was useless. Nothing much I could do. It was, took it in, you just got out of the swamp as soon as I could, went, showered it, which was all I could do to try and get the salt water off it. That was it. It was all gone. An expensive day out. The race started in Singapore the following evening. It was a weekend, and yeah, there was nothing I could do. Had to raise as much cash as I possibly could by going to ATMs with all the cards I could find, because I had to buy camera gear. Couldn't get anything from Canon Singapore or Malaysia, because it was a weekend. Managed to get enough gear to get through the race, and then a few days later, lost the last one at this race. So yeah, expensive day out. This one, tour of Antalya from February this year. This was at the top of a climb on stage 2 or maybe stage 3. This was, you can see at the background, you can see the snow, sleet. It was sleet. It was probably around about 2 degrees, 3 degrees, but with the wind chill factor, it felt an awful lot colder. The rain had come down unbelievably heavy. It was an awful day. It was the coldest I've ever been on the back of a motorbike, and I was shivering, shaking, and obviously trying to protect the gear, given past experiences. We got over the climb, and we just stopped because I was shaking so much, and I couldn't put on my gloves because I can't work the cameras with gloves on. I was trying to put on bits of plastic, another rain jacket which I had stashed away, everything I could, and I could hardly move my fingers. And the race suddenly came, and the rain came down heavier than I'd ever seen it. And as you can see from this picture, which I posted before, it was bouncing off the road. It was freezing. I mean, it was an awful day. I managed to get the shot. It's not exceptionally sharp, which is it's impossible. I mean, you could hardly see through the rain. And yeah, we were still maybe half the stage to go, so on the back of the motorbike again, absolutely freezing, but no choice, had to get to the finish. And I was shivering and shaking for 2, maybe almost 3 days after. It was that bad. But yeah, it was a good picture. Not too many pictures that day. Anyway, that's the story behind those. They're all turned to mono and shot on Canon. Mono because it suits the mood. There isn't an awful lot of colour in them. So tune in next time.